inflation makes the poor poor. It doesn't hurt us.
No.
If inflation is in asset prices, like the stock market, real estate, we make fortunes. But the working guy out there working for $50 an hour or whatever they work for today, he just took a haircut. Then he can't afford to live. So they're losing control. So rioting's blowing up in Europe, like Austria, big place. Turkey's in serious trouble. And so the world economy is coming apart. And if that crashes the stock market, that's the pensions.
Yeah, right.
My generation of boomers was 1974 when I came back from Vietnam. I find my poor dad broke, even with a PhD. Exactly as Marx predicted, the intellectuals would go.
Yeah.
So then in 74, ERISA comes out, which is the 401k. And today, as we speak in 2021, December, 10,000 boomers are retiring every day. And they're dependent upon the stock market. And if the euro-dollar system comes down, what do you think is going to happen to the U.S. stock market?
Yeah. And let's also think this through, because the Fed just came out with an announcement where they're taking the taper, or their quantitative easing from 105 billion down to 75. And this is kind of on the path to raising interest rates. But it puts the central planners in a very precarious position, because right now, as most of your viewers know, we've got prices going up significantly in the United States. The CPI says it's 6.8%, but we know it's a lot higher than that. So we've got all this consumer price inflation. Okay, well, if the Fed comes out and increases interest rates, and if that does crash the stock market, that crashes people's 401k, then everyone's going to say, well, Fed save us. Fed save us. Where's the Fed put? Well, then if they come back and say, okay, well, we'll reduce interest rates back down to zero, we'll do quantitative easing again. But well, wait a minute, time out. Because remember, we've got inflation at 6.8%. So if they do that, then inflation most likely goes to 7 to 8 to 9, and that's as measured by the government. So they're in this we all are in this crazy position where either you lose a tremendous amount of purchasing power by the 401ks crashing, or you lose a tremendous amount of purchasing power by the prices of the stuff that the average American buys daily going up by 10, 15, maybe even 20% per year.
Correct. And that happened in 72 also when Nixon moved jobs into China. I was of that generation watching all this stuff happening.
Yeah.
And the other thing that this book says here is, as you know, inflation makes the poor poor. It doesn't hurt us.
No.
If inflation is in asset prices, like the stock market, real estate, we make fortunes. But the working guy out there working for $50 an hour or whatever they work for today, he just took a haircut. Then he can't afford to live.
That's right.
This is the big one, okay? Who stole my pension? What Marx says, the problem with capitalism, it leaves the bottom half poor. So you could be what he called middle class in capitalism in America. But capitalism will ultimately push you down into poverty.
Right.
And so in 74, I come back from Vietnam, ERISA comes out. ERISA is the 401k today. Now, you and I know what happens when that market crash was just coming.
Yeah.
The boomers, my generation, are toast.
Yeah, the middle class gets wiped out.
Yeah, because we're so dependent on this thing called a 401k, which is a defined contribution pension plan. In other words, the defined contribution means if you put in $1 million, hopefully get $1 million back. But the old pension plan was called a defined benefit. So if you worked for Ford Motor Company and they promised you $1,000 a month, Ford guaranteed the $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
But a defined contribution, Wall Street, as long as Wall Street stayed up, it was a good deal. So the reason we wrote this book here is my classmates who flew for United Airlines and all that, they lost their pensions. PBGC, Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporations, they took their pensions. So as you and the reason we always get together, and we're talking with Jeff Snyder and all this, we're talking about the euro dollar crisis and how they're pumping up the stock market right now. My prediction is my generation, who are affluent today, will be in poverty in 10 years. The reason they're talking about inflation or deflation is because way back when I was in the 70s, A true capitalist would let a business fail. Okay, understand that capitalism, according to Schumpeter, is that capitalism destroys inefficient companies. So if you suck, capitalism wipes you out. You're out of business. So you look at one not too long ago, there was Blockbuster Video, then Netflix came along, and they're toast. They're just gone. And so a lot of true capitalists wipes out the inefficient or the obsolete. But for the last so many years, since 1907, really, they've been saving the banks. So the banks are so corrupt, and the reason the Federal Reserve had to come in was to protect the rich bankers. And what they did was back in 2008, there was quantitative easing, which is a very complex subject. But basically, the Fed just prints money and gives it to banks, okay, to prevent them from failing. So that's not capitalism. So what happened in 1971, President Nixon then took the dollar off the gold standard. And so that they could print as much money as they wanted to. And in 1972, I was flying behind enemy lines as a Marine pilot, and I went to look for gold. So this here is gold. This is God's money. Gold and silver are God's money. This is real money. And this here is a Zimbabwe dollar. And this is $10 billion. This may as well be the US dollar. So what the Fed is trying to do is print tons of debt, like I think 10 trillion this year, to prevent the banks from failing. So they need inflation because they want to pay back the debt with Zimbabwe dollars. Just think about that. So they can inflate the debt, print 10 trillion, then they print, here's $10 billion. This might have bought you an egg when it was good, a boiled egg. So they could pay off the debt with fake money. That's why I wrote the book Fake and all this stuff. So anyway, the reason inflation is going to wipe out people is because the average person is a consumer. So just understand, it goes to this word called collateral or security. You see, this is gold. This is real security. It's God's money. So is silver. And so is Bitcoin due to the blockchain technology. I'm not saying buy any of this stuff. I'm just telling you why I own this. So this is real money. I mean, I can travel anywhere in the world. Its value goes up and down as it's manipulated, and I can spend it. But what this is, the Zimbabwe dollar, is fake money. And the only way this comes into existence is an entrepreneur like me creates an asset. Rich Dad Poor Dad is about assets versus liabilities. So I go into BlackRock and I say, guess what? I have a startup here. Tesla or something. And Tesla is now $1 trillion company. But what happens if GM and, Biden doesn't like Tesla, I can tell, because he doesn't recommend them. I'm not in the game. I'm not in that dogfight. But let's say that GM comes out with an electric car that you can buy for $2. Tesla's toast. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so much of the stock market is based upon the valuation of a company like Tesla, or like the earlier thing, Netflix or Blockbuster Video. So much of it is you don't know what's called the counterparty to it. The only counterparty to this is God. God made this. And silver, God made this. And the Bitcoin is blockchain. That's what gives Ethereum and blockchain. So some people ask me, I'm Satoshi. I said, no, I don't speak Japanese. But I don't know anything about blockchain, but I just don't trust this. I don't trust the US dollar. I don't trust the Fed. I don't trust the Treasury. And I don't trust our government. And I don't trust Wall Street. If you do, invest your asset. But what they're doing is they're creating what I call a fake asset. I'm talking about the economy dying. The reason I say that is the Fed is incompetent. Now, the Fed, what I mean by incompetent, they can't save us. It's gone too far. They've been printing money since 1971. And instead of fixing the problem, they just kept making the problem worse. So let me give you an idea how much $1 trillion is and why I'm saying the Fed is incompetent and dying. So $1 trillion is a lot of money. And all you have to do today is hit a button. You don't have to print it anymore. Just hit a button. Say 1 trillion, 2 trillion, So if you spent $1 every second, it would take you 35,000 years to spend $1 trillion. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think you and I are going to be around in 35,000 years. But I think they just printed $3 or $4 trillion in the last few months. That's how much they're printing. So if you're saving money, I'll pray for you tonight, because your savings are actually real money. In other words, if you worked for it and you paid the taxes on that money you worked for, that's real legitimate money. Unfortunately, the Fed is printing trillions, and they're going to pay you nothing for your savings. I mean, when I was a kid, I got 15% on my savings. Today, you get nothing. So the Fed is screwing you. That's the term. What I understand about Bitcoin is that it just had a halving, and a halving means they print less of it. At the same time, Bitcoin is printing less, the Fed is printing trillions. Now, you don't need a degree in rocket science to figure that one out. The Fed is making the US dollar or any currency, the yen, the euro, the peso, softer. Bitcoin is getting harder. Gold is getting harder. Silver is getting harder. That's why I don't buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin to get rich. I just hate getting screwed by the Federal Reserve Bank and the Treasury. So if you want to keep saving money and putting it in the stock market, more power to you. But all that paper stuff is printed. And the CEOs of these stock market companies, they did a side deal with the Fed. So the Fed was loaning them billions of dollars for them to jack their stock price up. So the stock prices are at this artificial high, and all mom and pop are watching their 401ks or IRAs, and the stocks are this high. And the Fed keeps printing more money, keeps giving the CEOs indirectly, because they can't do it directly. They do it through what's called SRVs, special something vehicle. That's my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. And then they're going to try and put guys like me in jail. Happens every time. So this here is it. This is our schools. Go to school, get a job, become a small entrepreneur, start a pizza shop or something. I don't do that, because these guys pay 40% in taxes. Remember, money is debt and taxes. They work for money, they pay 40% in taxes. They work for money, they pay 60% in taxes. So the small entrepreneurs, the guys who are just startups, they're going to pay the highest taxes around. But the big business guys like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Rich Dad here, we only pay 20% tax. We're inside investors. I put my own deals together. I don't touch stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I'll create my own deal, like the water deal I talked about. I'm doing a Green New Deal, but I'll pay no taxes at all. And that's what financial education does.